Hello and welcome to the Knowi video training. In the previous module, the Introduction to Knowi, we explained how Knowi is an end-to-end platform. It connects directly to the data source and provides the insights out to the business users. In this module, the datasets and data modeling will be looking at that very first step in the process, which is the connection to the data source and then setting up our very first dataset. To do that, we'll click on Queries on the left-hand side, and then we'll create our new data source. As you can see, we provide connection to the majority of data sources you'd want to connect to. But in this case, we're going to pick something that is normally more complex for a standard BI tool to be able to report on, which is a NoSQL database. So we'll click on Mongo in this case. We'll provide our own name for that. And then we will test the connection and save it. What we've now done is set up a pipeline to that data source. We've created our connection to both ends, but we've still got nothing that Knowi is able to create any reports from. So that's where we need to build our queries, which we can click on either of these two buttons and takes us to the query page. On the left-hand side, we have the Data Explorer, which gives us a list of the collections that are available. And as we open one of these up, we can also see the attributes that we can drag across and use in our query. Alternatively, in the collections box, we can pull out the collection we're interested in. And once again, we can select just the metrics we want if we want to do that. In this case, we're going to bring them all across. And in our preview, we can now see all the data that we're actually interested in. We talk about Knowi being a native connection to these data sources. And in this case, I've just used drag and drop, but I could click on the editor and you can see we've got a Mongo query section where if we already have a Mongo query that will retrieve the data that we need, we can just paste that directly in here and that will bring that data out for you. We also have a Cloud9QL transformation box, which gives us the ability to create extra business logic or transformation logic. And there's a whole module about that, so I won't go into that here. Once I've done that, I need to determine how I want to interact with the data source. In most cases, we'll actually set this up as being a direct query, which means we will be querying this data every single time we want to open this dashboard. But if we know that we're going to be going across multiple dashboards using this data set, I can enable a cache and enable that for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 or whatever I want it to be. And then as I go through, the data will remain in cache. And only at the end of this time period would it then expire. And in which case, if I ask more questions, it will then bring more data. Otherwise, it will just remove it from the cache completely. Alternatively, I can actually bring the data into Knowi. And I've got two options. I can do a run once, which is more for dimensional data. So data that doesn't change very often. And we can set this up now as being a manual process. Or we can do schedule intervals. So we can update it however many minutes, hours, days, months, and even specify the window that we wanted to run it in. Now for the override strategy, we can replace everything every single time. We can create an upsert, so we'll define a key to see whether or not the data needs to be inserted or updated. There is a time-based retention window, so if you say you only want to keep 3 months, then Knowi will automatically keep that window updated for you. Or we can do replace all, including all the empty data as well. Now I'll just give it a name here. And we can specify a category if we wanted to do that. But in this case, I'm just going to do a create and run. Now this takes us to the dataset page, and we can see that we've already created our query, which is listed here. This is the dataset that's actually been generated from the execution of that query. And we've even created our very first visualization as well, which we call widgets. If we look at the dataset itself, we can see we've listed all the data types. So if any of these need to be changed or updated, we can do that. We also have an NLP section whereby if you have a particular synonym that you want to set up, so instead of campaign name, if you want it to be campaign, we can set those up. And when we have our NLP box, our search box that you'll see later in the courses, you're able to use just that term rather than the column name itself. We can also use an index. So if we need to improve the performance of data that's been loaded into Knowi, we can create an index against the fields that are either filtered or joined. And we can get a preview of the data if the data has actually been cached, which in this case, obviously we're using a live link, so it isn't in here. We also have the ability to modify those under the data types, the search-based analytics, or the indexing section. Thank you for watching. I hope this has been useful, and I look forward to speaking to you in the next module.